That's unfortunate, but that is the toxic environment that Mr. Poilievre has looked to foster, that has some of his MPs, frankly, chafing against. They don't like it. They don't like being handed the talking points.
Smash the like, hit subscribe, get your Canadian federal politics right here. Hello, gang. Aaron, Canadian Looney. We've got House Leader Stephen MacKinnon, who is one of the greasiest spoons in that nasty cabinet that Mark Carney has. He's here on CTV News with Vassy Kapelos, going to tell a bunch of tall tales, very deceiving. What he's going to be trying to pull off right here, he's just going to take a big dump on everything conservative. Let's see if Vassy will step in and do some journalism. Come on, girl. Let's take a look.
Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre squaring off for the first time this year in the House of Commons. It's the second day of the winter sitting, with the Liberals and Conservatives going head-to-head on affordability. Government House Leader Steve MacKinnon says he believes the minority parliament can work, but insists it's the Tories who are holding up bills from passing. Meanwhile, the Conservatives insist the Liberals are the ones who are standing in the way of economic growth. Steve MacKinnon, the government's House Leader, is with us live from the House of Commons now. Hi, Minister. It's good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
It's great to be with you.
I wanted to start off, Minister, with the way in which you're framing this return to the House of Commons, saying in order for your government to move forward on its agenda, the opposition needs to get out of the way. Are you saying that the millions of Canadians who voted for members of the opposition need to get out of the way?
Of course not. What I'm saying is that, for example, to take crime, for example, we have 5 or 6 significant pieces of legislation, Vassy, that deal with things like extortion, child pornography, with online harms coming up, with zones around mosques, churches, synagogues, to create safe zones, to deal with any number of issues around community safety in this country. The Conservatives used to be urging us to deal with these matters. Now they, as you would well know, talk these issues out, whether it be behind me in the House of Commons or in obscure committee rooms. The orders from the Leader's office are pretty plain. It is talk these bills out. It's almost like they don't want us to tackle these problems. It's almost like they don't want to honor their own voters who have urged them and sent them to Ottawa to work on these solutions. So we're asking them, yes, make your suggestions, make your contributions, and then let these things come to a vote. Vote for them, vote against them, up to you. But we want to make sure that we're delivering real results on crime and so many other things for Canadians.
Didn't they just make a deal, though, in the Justice Committee, for example, to press pause on one piece of legislation, looking at one to advance another on bail reform? And doesn't that very fact run counter to what you just spelled out?
Well, very encouraging. That happened just yesterday, and just after I gave the press conference that you just referred to. So we were very, very happy to see Bill C-14, which is a significant advance on bail reform, will be taken up and dealt with by the Justice Committee, and then we'll move to the bill I referred to a moment ago, the safe zones around places of worship.
Is it, I'm wondering about, I guess, the validity of, and I understand in some instances that the opposition, of which you used to be a member of at times, employs tactics to delay the advancement of a government agenda, but you were able to pass so little legislation last year. Is it not kind of ultimately too convenient, very convenient for you to be able to put that at the doorstep of the opposition rather than your own government? And how can you ensure for Canadians watching tonight that you will make every effort possible to not be stuck in the same situation?
Well, I don't want to bore your viewers, Vassy, and I certainly don't want to affect your stellar ratings, but I do want to say this one procedural thing. People don't understand that in the House of Commons, as long as you're talking, standing up, wasting time with debate and leaders' talking points from Mr. Poilievre's office, nothing can come to a vote. So unless you're prepared to invoke closure, for which you also need a majority of the House of Commons, then a bill cannot advance. So the Conservatives have adopted, it's an open secret, I'm sure you're well aware as well, that they will let no bill, even a bill that says the sky is blue, They will let no bill advance because they believe that a good day for them is a day where the government cannot advance on its priorities. That's unfortunate, but that is the toxic environment that Mr. Poilievre has looked to foster.
Friendly reminder, gang, smash the like, hit subscribe. We do work really hard at this stuff. That's it. Let's get back to the video. Come on, Vassy, do your job.
That has some of his MPs, frankly, chafing against. They don't like it. They don't like being handed the talking points. But this is just pure obstruction, Vassy, and we're going to call it out whenever we see it.
You know, I think it's fair to say our viewers are very interested in making sure that democracy is upheld in Parliament, and that a legislative agenda that could benefit them, perhaps or not, is advanced. Should the Conservatives, though, be taking lectures, for example, on what that democracy should look like or how it should be accomplished from a party that, you know, back in 2015 was saying the introduction of omnibus bills under Stephen Harper was an affront to democracy, an affront to the function of Parliament, and now you're employing the Budget Implementation Act to prove your point where the Conservatives are concerned? Should the opposition be taking lectures from your party on upholding parliamentary democracy?
I think Canadians living in conservative ridings are entitled to take these conservative MPs at their word. They said they wanted to deal with bail reform. They said they wanted to deal with extortion. In fact, they still get up every day in the House of Commons and ask about some of these criminal justice issues. Well, they have bills right in front of their nose that they can vote on today that offer solutions. And if they believe those solutions are insufficient, then they should offer concrete to you, to others, to Canadians, and certainly to their constituents, what they think an alternative approach would be. They don't do that. They use Mr. Poilievre's very venomous talking points and talk these things out. Again, I don't understand why they view a day of obstruction in the House of Commons as a win for them. I don't think Canadians feel that way. I don't think Canadians watching us from conservative ridings feel that way. But this is an affliction that has been introduced into the conservative ranks, and it's something that I know a lot of Canadians are frustrated at.
The Liberals, when they were in opposition, Mr. MacKinnon, Minister rather, never employed stalling tactics in order to blunt parts of the government's agenda. Is that seriously what you're saying tonight?
Not in any systematic way, no. No.
And you believe that this is systematic, despite the fact that
well, you know, yeah, I do.
Despite the fact that C5 passed because of the Conservative support, right? Despite the fact that they've now made this agreement to look at bail reform, you still think it's systematic?
Well, look, I do think they are responding, and this is important. You raise an important point. I do think they respond when the public opinion environment is so overwhelmingly behind an idea. For example, yesterday's measures to deal with affordability. For example, getting big major projects done. I think, yes, there are cracks in that armor on their side, if you will, and that's good. And the progress that you mentioned on the bail reform bill yesterday, that's good too. We'll take it when we can get it. We're obviously for all of our bills, and we're going to work to get them advanced. But Canadians who live in conservative ridings are entitled to have members of Parliament who speak their mind, offer suggestions, but at the end of the day, this systematic obstruction is not something that I think serves democracy.
You mentioned the measure that you announced yesterday, and we had Andrew Scheer on the show yesterday as well, who said that if it is exactly as the government has described it and introduced through legislation that way, that the government, as you just said, that the Conservatives rather will support the advancement of that. I did want to ask about sort of the political impetus behind the introduction of that. I know there's a policy imperative, which I'm sure you'll discuss, but I note that both you and the Prime Minister said there's no election in the offing, but the announcement in and of itself seems to run very counter to what Mr. Carney talked about during the Prime Minister talked about during the election campaign. He drew a distinction between his approach to the economic growth and what he criticized the Trudeau government, of which you were a part, their approach to economic growth, which he identified as just through immigration and population growth and government spending. What you announced yesterday is more than $11 billion of additional government spending that nobody from your government has said how you will pay for it. I imagine because you're not introducing a new tax or something to that effect, or described other cuts elsewhere, that it will come from additional borrowing. That runs counter to what Mr. Carney said during the election campaign, what you yourself have said on many instances since then. How are we to infer from that anything other than this is about politics and the possibility of an election?
Well, I don't think Mr. Carney ever ruled out measures to help vulnerable Canadians, and I don't think most Canadians think that helping out the 12 million people who get GST rebates, now grocery and essential goods benefit, will object to that. We saw post-pandemic, Vassy, a spike in food prices, and this is meant to help with that. Inflation largely tamed. That doesn't mean people feel inflation is largely tamed, and that's partly due to things like oranges, coffee, bananas, things where supply chains have been affected, where prices have gone up more than the rate of inflation. The Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, felt strongly that at this point in time where Canadians, many Canadians are struggling with those food prices, that we had an obligation to come in. I don't think that approach has ever been ruled out, but the thing that has not changed is that we know we have to grow the top line in Canada. We have to achieve growth, we have to create jobs, we have to protect the jobs we have that are threatened by trade measures, punitive trade measures coming from south of the border. But we have to create more jobs. We have to build big projects. We have to get things done. We do that every day. We wake up, put on our boots, and try and build big projects and create big opportunities for Canada every day. That we will not waver from.
But respectfully, Minister, the Prime Minister did criticize the former Prime Minister for too much government spending. And he had, food prices were extremely high, 30% higher during the election campaign than they were five years prior. There were no promises made about $11 billion of additional spending. I am not in any way taking away from the very, very specific need, as you outline it, of Canadians. I know it. I hear it every day as well. But this is not exactly what you promised to do during the campaign, add $11 billion extra dollars to a deficit, was it?
Look, what we were elected to do is to be sensitive to the needs of Canadians, many of whom feel anxiety because whether it's threatened trade measures or other things, or whether it's simply increased costs due to food inflation. We're here to help with that. Any responsible government must be here to help with those kinds of pressures. We have an existing mechanism, a tool, already built into the tax system in the form of the GST rebate. It's easy to build upon, and it's easy to justify, in my view, in a world where food inflation, imported food particularly, has seen supply-related shocks, and which means that food has increased more than the overall CPI. That is something that we've been giving a lot of thought to over the last few years. They're giving a lot of thought to that, by the way, in the UK, throughout Europe. And Mr. Trump is giving a lot of thought. You hear him talk about affordability. Japan going through significant cost pressures on that. This is a worldwide phenomenon. This is our response to that.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. I'm out of time. Always appreciate your time, Minister. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vassy.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron Canadian Looney, smash the like, hit subscribe, get your Canadian federal politics right here. We do cover Canadian federal politics, this legacy media, all the things that happen in the House of Commons and Parliament. That's it. That's why you've got to subscribe, smash the like, come and check out one of our live shows. That's it. Aaron Canadian Looney, ciao for now. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching.